Caitlyn's on Bumble? But why does she need to be on a dating site? Isn't she already in a relationship with Peter? I asked Maya out of curiosity, because it was just the other day when I saw them kissing in an empty classroom. I don't know, maybe they broke up. But I swear that I saw her profile on Bumble, Jade said. Caitlyn, Jade, Peter, and I were in our final years of high school. Peter and I were childhood friends along with neighbors, and during the first 2 years of high school, the four of us used to hang out together. But one day, Caitlyn decided to seduce Peter, and the two of them started dating together. No, I don't have a crush on him. I never did. It's just that there are certain codes in a friendship, and one of them is that my two best friends are not supposed to date each other, because if they end up breaking up, it would be difficult for me. So I decided to cut them off out of my life completely, and Jade followed me along. It wasn't like my life became miserable after that. It was still serene. However, I missed hanging out with those two. Nevertheless, when Maya told me about Caitlyn being on Bumble, I felt a bit frustrated because this is exactly why I never wanted the two of them together in the first place. Still, Maya told me to keep it under wraps for now and just see what would happen next. I used to give out tuition for middle school kids, and the exams were around the corner as well, so I was a bit tied up for the next few days. That was why I could not notice what was going on around me. Neither did it matter that much whether Peter and Caitlyn were dating or had broken up, because I had already decided that I would never talk to them in my life the day I ended our friendship. It was 3 days before our exam, and I was in a biology lecture while feeling a bit drowsy when I noticed Peter walking out of class looking all worn out. He was still the person I cared most about since he had been my childhood friend, so it was natural for me to worry about him more than my other friends. I started thinking about what Maya told me about Caitlyn being on Bumble, trying to date other people, and downloaded the Bumble app to see for myself. The thing was that I made a fake account to check her, and it was with the name of David, and somehow managed to make it look convincing. The exams had started, and I was still unable to find Caitlyn over the Bumble app, so thinking that Maya might have been mistaken, I stopped checking the app. Until one day. It was on the last day of our exams when I had just gotten home after completing it, and I was feeling quite relaxed by the fact that it was finally over. So I lay over to my bed and started scrolling through my phone when I opened Bumble to check what was going on over there. That's when I noticed that I was matched with Caitlyn. The picture she had uploaded looked quite old. I remember that I was the one who took it when we went to a party, but this was erased from her phone, so she couldn't put it unless she somehow managed to get this picture back. I decided to keep talking to her to see what kind of conversation she is going to have with me. Strangely, she was the one who was coming at me first, and she was thinking that I was the dude in the picture. But the thing that ticked me off most was that the way she was talking and behaving seemed nothing like the Caitlyn I know. Trust me, she was a gorgeous girl whom guys wanted to be with, and many girls felt envious of her. So it was clear that this person was also using a fake account with her name to hook up with guys. Now all I could think about was that I had to catch this person red-handed and make him stop this nonsense. I continued chatting and flirting with the person who was using the Caitlyn account, and I tried to ask her out on a date, but no matter how many times I asked, she kept postponing it. One day, all of a sudden, she asked me out on a date herself, which was surprising to me, because she was the one who kept rejecting it first. Nonetheless, we agreed to meet in a nightclub for the date. The nightclub was her idea, and she told me that she would be wearing a black dress with a mask on. The date was for the next day, so I had plenty of time to prepare for it. Firstly, I asked a guy from our school to meet me in the club the next day at the same time that was decided between me and the fake Caitlyn, and the next thing I did was I went to Caitlyn's house for the first time in so long, just to clear things out with myself without revealing anything too. It was because I was still in doubt. After all, you never know if you can be the original Caitlyn. Caitlyn was more than surprised to see me after such a long time, that she had tears in her eyes. The Caitlyn in front of me and the Caitlyn on the dating app looked so different that it was clear that was an imposter. Who made it even clearer was that I was talking to the real Caitlyn. I got a message on Bumble from the fake one. Anyway, the next day I went with the other guy to the bar, and I had already explained the situation to him. That was when I saw Maya walking in toward the counter. Even though she was wearing a mask, I recognized her in an instant. The guy went ahead and approached Maya, and as I was watching her from a distance in a black dress and mask talking to the guy, I remembered that the picture of Caitlyn was taken from Maya's phone. I was the kind of person who always faced everything head on, so I just went ahead and confronted her. Instead of feeling bad, she smiled at me, saying that she wanted to break them up. She said that she always thought of her as a fake person. She hated Caitlyn and wanted to take away everything that she loved. I remembered another incident from the past. It was when Caitlyn was too drunk to walk and fell from stairs when Maya was with her. It was clear to me now whom I should have cut off from my life and who was a toxic friend. I looked at her face with disgust and walked out of the club. Hey guys, thanks so much for all this support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. Dating is hard. It doesn't matter if you are male or female. It's always hard when you try to engage in dating, and it was just too hard for me. It's not because I'm an unattractive person or anything. Instead, I don't socialize much. Whenever I'm facing a woman, I just don't know what to talk to them about. And for that reason, most people often think of me as a rude person and start avoiding me. Okay, so one day I was just thinking about the solution to my problem, about how I should date when I can't even talk to any of them, and called my friend Neon. He suggested that I should try talking to them through social media or a dating app, but I did not know how to approach a random stranger on social media. It just felt awkward to me. So I searched on Google for dating apps and installed the first one that popped up, which was Bumble. After installing the app, I opened it and started going through it. As I was swiping, I did not get a match for a few minutes, so I closed it, thinking it was a bad choice to depend on an app for dating. I'm a gamer, so after putting my phone down, I went to play games on my computer and spent a few hours playing. I looked to rest in between and decided to check my phone and inadvertently opened the Bumble app, only to find that I had a match with a Latina girl, Maria. She was the one to initiate the conversation between us with a simple hello and then asked how I was doing. I did not find it difficult to answer, so I just replied as I do with any of my guy friends if they would ask me such questions. She then started asking about my hobbies, etc., which I surprisingly liked. It felt good to talk to a girl. I had never once in my life had an actual proper conversation with a female besides my mom, so it felt like quite a new and refreshing experience to me, and I was loving it. After a few days of talking, she asked me if I wanted to meet up for a date. Even though I was hesitant, we still agreed to meet at a little cafe for an evening date. I dressed up in casual attire the next day and went to the cafe for our date. She had already told me what she would be wearing, so I recognized her immediately, sitting in a yellow dress in the corner, wearing a ponytail. She looked prettier than how she looked in her pictures. I approached, and after a normal greeting, sat across the table. We started with a light conversation, and I was still feeling a bit nervous and awkward, but she started talking in a way that made me comfortable, and before you know it, we were chatting like we had known each other for years. About an hour or two passed by, and we decided to move our date to a restaurant for a dinner. She took out her phone and searched for a nearby restaurant, and then we went to the one she chose. As we ordered our meals, we started chatting again. The conversation we were having was so good that we did not notice how the time just went by and 2 hours had passed. Still, neither of us was really ready to call it a night. Anyway, We decided to order some dessert after the meal and have some drinks while we chit-chat. While we were having a nice conversation, she excused herself, saying she needed to use the restroom. I started waiting for her and using my phone in the meantime, but when she did not come back even after half an hour, I got worried and asked one of the female staff to check on her. As I was talking to the staff, she came back and apologized for being late, and when I asked her what took her so long, she said it was her menstruation. She did not have a sanitary pad with her, so she was asking someone for help, and that was why she was so late. Even though she was talking casually about this because it's a natural thing that happens with a woman, I was still feeling embarrassed by it. After that, we decided to call it a day, and I asked if I should drive her home, which she agreed upon. So as we were driving back, we saw a man putting a woman inside a black car and started driving off. It sounds normal, right? But no, it didn't look normal to me. I felt like something was wrong over there because the female looked too drunk to even stand on her own. I wanted to do something, but I had Maria with me and I felt obligated to safely drop her at her apartment. What are you thinking? Follow that damn car. As she said that, I looked at her with surprise, but the moment I saw concern and fear in her eyes for that girl, I followed her advice. We quietly followed that car as it drove out of the town, and I made sure to maintain a safe distance from it so that the man does not notice that he was being followed. As the car reached a place that was surrounded by woods, he stopped the car and stepped out of it. I guess he was out of gas or something, because he checked the car and kicked it in frustration. Then he called someone through his phone, and about 15 or 20 minutes later, another car came and picked them up. Surprisingly, Maria was recording all of this on her phone. I did not question it because we might need it later. So we followed the car and it stopped in front of a huge house. The house was in an abandoned area, which doesn't make sense to either of us. Why would a guy take a drunk girl to a secluded place? But we still thought we should wait to see if he is dropping off the girl at her house. As we waited there, an hour passed and those men still did not come out of the house, and I did not have the patience to wait anymore. So Maria suggested that we call 911, explain the situation, and let's see what they do. And that was exactly what we did. Officers came and started searching the house. Two men with huge builds came out and started threatening the officers to leave. Within minutes, the matter got out of hand, and they had to call backup for help. After searching the place, 13 young girls and 7 boys were found, and it turns out there was an entire legal business of human trafficking going on there. Those people used to kidnap girls and boys who were either walking home late or coming out late drunk from a party or some similar situations, and then take them back to this place. After that, they would be exploited for smuggling, sexual exploitation, or sell them to forced prostitution, etc. I would never be able to forget this date. As I dropped her in front of her apartment building, she said before going inside, "Trust me, I was thinking the same thing. Even though this was my first date ever, I think it was completely different and memorable than any normal date."
Any of you given that Bumble app a go? I know it seems massively counterintuitive to download an app which requires the girl to make the first move when they're notoriously not the ones to make the first move. But I can assure you, it's definitely worth it. But at the same time, I think the single worst thing that happened to me in 2020 took place just as a result of a Bumble date. So, it all started when I matched with a Welsh girl named Lima. After a day or two of talking, we agreed to meet at a little cafe for a few coffees. We hit it off talking about this and that, and before you know it, we're chatting like we'd known each other for years. 1 hour turned to 2, 2 to 3, and still neither of us was ready to call time on the date. Neither of us drank alcohol that evening, her for religious reasons, me because I'm something of a fitness freak. But while she was drinking mocktails, I was on the coffee and I was on it big time. There came a point where I needed to wheeze so badly that I was practically doing the entire river dance routine waiting for the one-person toilet to become available. This happens every half an hour without fail almost all night. I have to interrupt her, apologize, and leg it off to the little bathroom to relieve myself. I felt like an absolute idiot having to nip off to the lab so often, but every time I emerged, she'd look up and smile, waving away my apologies with some light mockery of how I have the bladder of a 4-year-old. But one time, I emerged from the toilets to see that she's no longer sitting alone, and that someone is sitting in my seat. At first, I thought she just bumped into a guy she knew. She certainly looked quite comfortable talking to him, but it turned out to be the complete opposite. I walked up behind him, playfully put my hands on his shoulders and say, "I think you might be in my seat there, mate." It wasn't confrontational or aggressive, just pure banter. I expected the guy to jump up, maybe warmly apologize, maybe give a little introduction, something like that. But he didn't. He looked back at me with this look on his face that said, "Get your effing hands off of me." And as he's staring up at me, Lima shoots me this look as if to say, "Help." Only then am I like, "Wait, do you two know each other?" Turns out this bloke had been sitting alone enjoying some food and wine and had been making eyes at Lima every so often. Then, when I'd gone off for a wee, he'd taken his opportunity, sat in my seat, then began to, as Lima put it, flirt so outrageously forward that I thought I was going to puke up my nojito. Now, I actually had to ask this guy to leave us alone before he got up and finally gave me my chair back, but not before he tried to stare me out. I had a few inches on him, that's in height, you oversized children, and I could tell he didn't put half the gym time in that I did, so it's not like I was in the least bit intimidated. It just seemed like he was trying really, really hard to be some comic book idea of what women want, and it was honestly a little bit pathetic. He looked completely and utterly harmless, like a chocolate pistol. He looks like he'd melt at the first sign of trouble. But as I found out later that night, looks can be dangerously deceiving. So, after the little confrontation at the table, Lima and I laugh it off, then carry on with our night. Now Lima can see over my shoulder and therefore also see the creepy guy, but all I can see in front of me is her and one of the cafe's walls, so I have to rely on her to let me know if the guy is still there. I honestly expected him to just leave after such a confrontation. Everyone in the cafe was watching. It was pretty mortifying, but he didn't. He stayed put and continued to make eyes at Lima, which, to her credit, she just ignored. But then when it came to me walking her home, he gets up and pays his bill too. Then yup, you guessed it. I look over my shoulder and as we're passing through Chinatown, and guess who I see? Tiny Mr. Stare-Out, still keeping up the intimidation game by staring out from under his brow, obviously too drunk to realize he looked far more comical than scary. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't exactly scared at that point, but we were being followed. It made for something of a tense situation, but nothing I thought I couldn't handle. As we approached her apartment block, I asked Lima if she was comfortable going inside while the guy could see where she lived. She admitted to being uncomfortable about it, but the block had like 50 to 60 flats in it, and unless he got in the door behind her, there was little chance of him working out which unit she lived in. But as it turned out, Lena was way more concerned about me and actually invited me inside for a nightcap. I didn't assume that I was getting lucky, but I wasn't about to turn her down. So I went inside for a cup of this weird ginger tea, in the comfort that our little stalker friend would soon get bored and wander off. I was in her flat for no less than an hour, and by that time, each of us was confident that our new friend had departed. We even checked out of her bathroom window, which looked down into the street, and he was nowhere to be seen. So I thanked her for a good night. We had a little smooch, and I started my walk home with that lighter-than-air feeling you get after a successful date. It's around that time that I start thinking something along the lines of, God, imagine if that loser was somehow still following me, which prompts me to look over my shoulder. Lo and behold, there's a single figure following me, maybe 50 or 60 meters behind, with a remarkably similar silhouette to the lad who tried following us. I have to admit to being in a state of disbelief for a moment as I stopped and studied the figure as they approached. Then, after passing under a streetlight, I got a clear look at the person. It was him. "You gotta be screwing with me, mate," I said out loud, and immediately they stopped. I knew it was him, so him playing at being a statue didn't make a blind bit of difference. I just told him to keep his distance and there'd be no problems, then just carried on with the 20-minute walk back to my place. Every so often I'm checking over my shoulder and this lad is still behind me. Granted, he's some way away, but he's definitely following me, and the closer we get to my apartment, the more it becomes obvious that he's making a considerable effort to close the distance. Now, unlike Lima, the apartment I lived in was just one of two in this big old Edwardian. I have the top floors while the other tenant had the ground floor and the basement, complete with his entrance. So, if this lad sees what door I go into, he's got my flat. He doesn't have to guess which one of the 60 I'm in. He knows where I live. Obviously, I'm not in the least bit comfortable with that, so I decide on a little show of force to deter my new follower. I turn around and just march right at him. Then, when I'm within about spitting distance, I gave him what for about being a creep and a loser, promising I'll kick his head in if he carries on following me. It seemed to have the desired effect as he started walking off in the complete opposite direction. It was really strange, but I carry on walking, checking over my shoulder one more time, and he's gone. Problem solved, right? Well, not quite. About a minute or two goes by and I reach the entrance to a fairly small park. My flat is literally just on the other side of it, so I'm in this blissful ignorance of thinking that not only had I scared the creepy guy off, but that I was so close to home that nothing could possibly hurt me now. I mean, I was on home base, right in my big old backyard. Besides, I'd had a great night. I had drinks with this gorgeous anesthesiologist, definitely securing myself a second date in the process, and I had myself a little tough guy moment with that absolute bam. Everything flashed bright for a second, and I felt my knees just buckling under me, almost as if though my brain had switched off power to them. I honestly don't know if I was knocked out for a second or two, but I do know that the next thing I can feel is this sharp, hot pain in the back left side of my head. I knew that I'd been hit by something, I just didn't know what or by who. I was so dazed that it didn't even occur to me that it could have been him. I honestly thought I was just being mugged or something, in which case it wouldn't have been my first rodeo. I'd been mugged at knife point in London back when I was a student, and I needed to just keep my mouth shut, hand over the valuables, and get away with nothing but damaged pride and a lump on my head. So, the only thing I do before trying to find my feet is to toss out my wallet and phone onto the concrete and just be like, just take it and F off. I heard someone wheeze a laugh, probably at how pathetic I looked. But when they spoke, I knew exactly who it was. "I thought you were going to kick my head in. Now look at you." Whack. It kicked me so hard in the side of the head that I thought my orbital socket might be broken. And in between worrying that I'd end up losing my eye if they kicked me again, it dawned on me the little tow rag who'd been following me had somehow found a way to cut me off and ambush me. And it became quite obvious that I was in much, much more trouble than I'd first anticipated. The phone and wallet weren't going to cut it. I needed to get on my feet, and fast. It didn't matter that I was taller and stronger, maybe even faster than this guy. He had the upper hand, and let me tell you, it was not a nice feeling. The force of the kick set me off balance, but I tried to use the momentum to find my feet. If I was drunk, I'd have been utterly screwed, but since I was sober, I did actually manage to get both feet on the ground before trying to bring myself upright. But nope. Another kick hits me right in the corner of the mouth, and I was sent flying backwards again. This time, not only is my mouth filling up with blood, but I can feel the teeth on the left-hand side of my mouth grinding together where the kick had chipped a few of them. It sent my skin crawling as I spat the blood out. I put my hand out and felt something cold and metallic, a fence on which I was once again trying to pull myself up. But again, Right as I was about to find my feet, the guy attacked. Only this time, he didn't strike me. He wrapped one arm around my neck and held something cold and sharp over my right eye. I'm not sure if it was a knife or a piece of glass or whatever, but I think that was the single most terrifying moment of my life, thinking, well, I'm going to be blind now, and hoping I'll be able to buck him off before he goes for my throat or something. Only he didn't cut me. Instead, he hissed something right into my ear. Let's just say brevity wasn't his strong suit, and I'd rather not type out the actual exchange, but it was as gloating, vicious, and vile as you can imagine, with plenty of references to the date I'd been on that evening. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I just waited for whatever was going to happen. But thank God he must have seen sense or something. He made some comment about me only being alive the next day because he'd let me live. After that, he gave me one more good punch to the side of the face. Then all I heard was the sound of trainers hitting concrete as he legged it. I spent the next few minutes spitting out blood as I tried to find my phone. I think he'd either stamped on it or I'd maybe tossed it with a little too much force because the screen was smashed into bits. But again, a little bit of divine intervention meant it worked just enough for me to hammer out a 999 call, after which I dragged myself to the park's gates and sat there waiting for the ambulance to turn up. Aside from a bit of concussion, a lot of swelling, and some chipped teeth, I was pretty much all right. There was no skull fracture, no broken orbital socket, nothing like that, although I'd been lucky to say the least. The doctor said the first wound on the back of my head looked like it had come from a brick or a large rock, and if he'd hit me any harder with it in that particular spot, there's a good chance he'd have just killed me with his first strike. And that was the really scary bit, thinking that all the kicks and punches and threats that came after were like a weird blessing. I was still alive, when in some timelines, I would be checking in for the big sleep. I was angry about it for a long, long time, and I'd be a liar if I said I didn't let that attack change my behavior for the worse for a while. Seeing the guy getting 6 years for assault and grievous bodily harm really helped things, but still, that wasn't enough for me on some level, and it took me a while to acquiesce. Me and Lima carried on dating for a few months, which was lovely, but she had to move away for work, so obviously we had to call time on it. And the 4 trips to the dentist were terrible, as they basically had to file and cap my teeth one at a time, and that was definitely the worst part. How 5 minutes turned into an ordeal that lasted months of court dates and dental appointments. That's my one big takeaway from the whole thing, really. How one little misunderstanding can have terrifyingly far-reaching consequences.